Version 4.1. Initializing upgrades. Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, the uncut cocaine of libertarianism, and this is the Ask Me Anything episode of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. And I've got some interesting questions this week. We begin with the question. You previously said, that being me, Darryl, you previously said that people would not want to clean toilets. Now, before I continue with the rest of the question, I want to give some context because, yes, I did make that statement, and I have also clarified on Free Talk Live the statement, but I don't think I necessarily clarified on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. But the statement was in context of if nobody has to work. If, this weird utopia thing like the Venus Project, or there's a universal basic income and then nobody has to work because then you can just follow your dreams. In that scenario, I don't think anybody would volunteer to go scrub toilets at Target. I actually don't think anybody would volunteer to, be a cashier at Target. The reason people do those jobs is because, people need to earn money to wind up surviving. Now, that's not to say that some people don't enjoy doing those things. And this is what I clarified previously, at least on an episode of Free Talk Live. When I worked for an airline, and I worked the late shift, they didn't have a third shift per se, where it was, working overnight from, say, like 10p to 6a, but they did have what was classified a late second shift. So would go in the afternoon, probably like 3 or 4, get off sometime, like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. So that late second shift, when the planes would stay in the, city, was either Birmingham or Louisville or Myrtle Beach, where I was working through various points of working for the airline. But, the terminating flights, those flights, the plane is staying, it's not going out until the next morning. Those airplanes had to be cleaned. And when I worked that shift, I actually preferred to dump the lavatories and clean the toilets. Not because I enjoyed cleaning toilets, but because I had some lazy coworkers that didn't necessarily want to always pull their weight on the cleaning of the insides of the planes. So, let me just explain what all goes into cleaning a plane at night. So, obviously, you have to remove all of the baggage out of the cargo bins. And then you're supposed to, if there's any trash laying in there, you pull it out, and then you go up into the actual seating area of the plane, and you have to remove all of the trash out of the seat backs where the magazines and the safety cards go. Because, people put a lot of trash in there, so you got to remove all of that trash. And then you're supposed to lift up the seat. That way you can check up under the seat for trash and make sure that there's no, hidden anything. And then somebody goes through and they wipe down the seats and the tray tables. And then somebody else cleans the galley. You got to empty the trash. You've got to dump out a bunch of ice. And, again, you got to make sure that, there's not any contraband or anything that's in those areas. And then somebody vacuums the floor. And on a larger plane that seats, somewhere over 100 people, it's going to take some time. And if somebody is being slow and they're, checking Facebook on their phone or calling their girlfriend or texting whoever, they're not going to be, doing their share of the work, which means that you have to wind up doing extra work. So that's why I loved dumping the labs, because then I didn't have to worry about, is this person going to do, as much work as they should? So in the context of, having different jobs and, needing a paycheck, yes, people will scrub toilets and will be, happy to do it. But in the context of a utopian society where nobody has to work, then no, I don't think anybody is going to volunteer to scrub a toilet for free. That said, I continue. The questioner says, I think somebody would or possibly would invent better ways around, and if you enable to do so without the greed in the way, I think if it's enabled, there would still be a difference, but by choice and welcomed. Oh well, we got Clump 2016. Not entirely sure on that, but I do like the concept of, somebody creating a self-cleaning toilet. That is definitely interesting to me. Hopefully that comes about. Next question. Darryl, why do you continue to try and ruin liberty? Here's the serious question. Do you believe that the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire and the Free State Project can work with each other on their common goals to bring more liberty to the state of New Hampshire? Possibly. But at the same time, I don't think so in any official capacity. And the reason I say not in an official capacity is because the Free State Project is a 501c3 nonprofit that is not supposed to be involved in an official capacity in politics. However, the chairman of, or rather the president of the Free State Project is a member of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Several other members of the board have run for political office, although not as libertarians. I think now that the Libertarian Party has ballot access, I'm hoping that a lot of the Free State Project participants that are politically active, that are actually libertarians and not, some variant of conservative or liberal, I'm hoping that the actual libertarians in the FSP will wind up joining the Libertarian Party to bring more liberty to the state. So I think it's possible, but not in an official capacity. Stay tuned. There's more.
In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? Will anybody care? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Don't forget, Friday is the anniversary episode. 4 years of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. And I think I'm going to do something a little bit different on Friday. I am not going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do, but just keep in mind it will probably be something that is totally different from what I've been doing recently. And I'll just leave it at that. Before I get back to the Ask Me Anything, I want to make sure that I do tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Because for nearly 40 years, and it's coming up on 40 years, since 1977, And we're about to hit 2017 in just over a month. So almost 40 years, people have been buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver with Roberts & Roberts brokerage. Roberts & Roberts also takes Bitcoin for precious metal purchases, and they've permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. So call Roberts & Roberts brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. Or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. Back to the questions. Question says, which candidate or candidates are you most looking forward to or hoping will take the stage at the Libertarian National Convention in 2020? And, this is a very interesting question for a couple of reasons. So like the 2016 campaign just ended, right? And people are already gearing up for 2020. One thing that I would hope of the candidate, and it's a little too early to actually wind up, endorsing somebody because there's a lot of time between now and 2020. I will probably not issue an official endorsement until like mid-2018, early 2019. Hell, could even be as late as, sometime during 2020 itself. I don't know. But I do know that there are several people that have expressed some kind of interest that I am keeping a watchful eye, a hopeful watchful eye on. One of them being Kim Ruff, who was my communications director for my campaign this past year, and Sarah Daggers, who has announced a sort of joint campaign with Kim. They're doing hashtag RuffDaggers2020. So keeping a watchful eye on that. Hopefully they are serious about this. Will Coley has also expressed some kind of interest in doing something. I don't know if that means that he personally will be making the run or if he's trying to persuade somebody. Also, Larry Sharp, who we almost had as the vice presidential nominee this year. There's talk about Larry running for the presidential nomination in 2020. I don't know if Larry has actually said this or not. I know he's planning a gubernatorial run in 2018 in New York. So I'm very hopeful that he does well in that run. And then, after the 2018 election, let's seriously start looking at 2020. But right now, I think it's just a little bit too early to make any kind of firm sort of statements about 2020. Now, one additional thing that I will say about the 2020 election right now is that I had some hopes for Adam Kokesh, but there's some things that have happened recently that seem to have, let's say, for a lack of a better term, torpedoed his campaign. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I'm sure you can find it very easily online. Otherwise, I don't necessarily want to get into the details because some of it is just kind of, drama stuff that has happened, but other stuff, like there's serious allegations about his personality and, whether or not he, is taking advantage of everybody that's volunteered to work on his staff or that has been hired, and I'm using that term loosely in air quotes, that has been hired to work on his staff. But there have been allegations about, some stuff, manipulative sort of stuff, people being underpaid, not following through with agreements, etc. for several years. And the very first incident, I was like, this is just one person that had a bad experience. And then, it was, somebody else had a bad experience. okay, so maybe it's just, one or two people. And then earlier, a couple months ago, there were like 4 other people that came out. Hey, this is my experience. So now it's become a pattern, not just a, 1 or 2 people had a bad experience sort of thing. Next question. One conflict is hunger. Killing and eating plants and other animals is violent. We have to eat or die. Suicide and murder are violent. How do we resolve this peacefully? This is one of those sort of questions that I don't think anybody will ever be able to resolve, because everybody has different concepts about whether or not it's considered murder to kill an animal. Is it murder to kill a plant? Is it, you're killing the plant for sustenance, you're killing the animal for sustenance? Is that murder? Does it necessarily have to be violent? And then that gets into a bigger discussion about humane treatment of animals, humane treatment of plants, things along those lines. Should we begin eating the recently naturally deceased humans? And I think that, just because of the taboo nature of that should be a last resort for dire situations only. The movie about the airplane that crashed in the mountains, I forget the name of it, but, they wound up doing cannibalism to survive because it was a dire situation. Then there was the group of people heading out west back in the 1800s, had to do something. So dire situations only. Stay tuned. There's more.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerary supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Hi, I'm Nick Hazelton from the Anarcho-Yakutalism podcast, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, the Ask Me Anything episode. Continuing the train of thought here about hunger and violence of eating food. The question is, should we begin eating the recently naturally deceased humans? Questioner continues, I guess we'd run out of food eventually based on the current human population and birth rate and the rate of death, assuming that every person begins eating dead humans only. How long before we run out of food? And also, how long before you would run out of humans to wind up eating? So again, I do not condone cannibalism as a normal activity, but again, if it's a dire situation of you're in a plane crash and the person next to you wound up getting decapitated in the plane crash, and the only thing you have to survive on is your cabin mate and some peanuts, then yeah, by all means, do what you need to do to survive. And full disclosure here, if me and you, whoever you might be, are in a situation and, I wind up dying and you have to eat me to survive, go ahead, do it. You have my permission. Next question. What is your chronotype? And I wound up taking this little quiz, and it actually kind of seems like it's a quiz that was made up to promote a book. The quiz, I'll post a link in the show notes where you can find that. But my chronotype is bear. And then they have a description. There's actually 4 different chronotypes. Bears, they say real bears are go-with-the-flow ramblers, good sleepers, and anytime hunters. They say this name fits fun-loving, outgoing people who prefer a solar-based schedule and have a high sleep drive. There's a good bit more written here. The other chronotypes, they say, are dolphins. Real dolphins sleep with only half of their brain at a time, which is why they're called unihemispheric sleepers. The other half is awake and alert, concentrating on swimming and looking for predators. This name fits insomniacs well. They're intelligent, neurotic, light sleepers with a very low sleep drive. Lion is next. Real lions are morning hunters at the top of the food chain. This name fits morning-oriented, driven, optimistic people with a medium sleep drive. And then they have wolves. Real wolves are nocturnal. This name fits night-oriented, creative extroverts with a medium sleep drive. They also say that about half of the population is in the bear chronotype. But I think that they're using sort of a very broad base here. Because if I had my choices of what shift to work, I would definitely work a graveyard shift. I loved working graveyard when I was a security guard, partly because, I prefer to be up at night, but I can also very easily adjust my sleep schedule. So, I've been on the schedule that I'm on now for quite a while, where I wake up early in the morning, or not, super early, but a lot of people consider, 8 o'clock in the morning to be early. So I'll wake up, about 8, and I'm up until I like going to bed around 11, sometimes as late as midnight. But I'm one of those people that I need somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep consistently. I can go on less for a day or two, but yeah, I definitely prefer more sleep. And again, there's more written about this, but I'll post some links in the show notes. Continuing with the questions, is libertarianism, with a lowercase l, is libertarianism a general life philosophy or a description of a political system? Is libertarianism, with a capital L, a general life philosophy or a description of a political system? I wrote it 2 ways, intending to show the term used as a proper versus a common noun in case it makes a difference in your answer. And yes, it does. Libertarianism, small l, I would say is a general life philosophy. Libertarianism, capital L, is a description of a political philosophy and a political system. The difference being that libertarian with a capital L is relative to the Libertarian Party. Libertarian with a lowercase l is in regards to the philosophy. And again, the base principle of libertarianism is often called the non-aggression principle, meaning that no one has a legitimate right to infringe on someone else's rights. The Libertarian Party actually has a pledge that says, I certify that I do not believe in the initiation of force for political or social goals, i.e., no one has the right to infringe on someone else's rights for any reason. Now, if you have had your rights infringed upon, then yes, you are allowed to defend yourself against the person that has infringed upon your rights. That is not you initiating force. That is you defending yourself. And some people can't really wrap their heads around that. They think that all force is initiative. Next question. Becky, I believe, is the spouse of the person sending the question, says, Becky and I are watching this little movie. It reminds me a little of Black Mirror, so I'm sharing the link. And I started watching, and I just could not get into it. I'll post the link in the show notes in case anybody is interested. And there are more questions that hopefully I'll get to in the closing moments of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.
When you hear the word lobbyist, you probably think about greedy corporations, but not all lobbyists are the same. Some are fighting for the freedoms you hold dear. Liberty Lobby LLC is doing just that in New Hampshire, working hard to represent you, not some special interest group. You can help by going to libertylobby.xyz, where your contribution will give us the tools we need to ensure that your voice is heard. Visit libertylobby.xyz today to find out more.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, the closing moments of the Ask Me Anything episode. What is the number one issue you'd like to see LP candidates focus on at the federal level? At the federal level, I would say ending the income tax. If I could only choose one, because most people aren't going to, wind up going along with abolish the federal government, which is, something that I would definitely like to see. I think that, on the scale of things, you're a lot more likely to wind up ending the federal income tax than you are to abolish the federal government. But, that's my answer. There are, a lot of issues that, and, trying to choose one of, you can only choose one. I'm glad that's not how life works, of you can only choose one thing to ever eat for the rest of your life. Well, no, that's not how life works. And there are a lot of people that they think that if you talk about one issue, then you're, not talking about every other issue. And no, that's not how it works. I can talk about, abolishing the federal government. I can talk about abolishing the Federal Reserve. I can talk about abolishing the income tax. I can talk about, reasons to get rid of the Federal Department of Education. I could talk about why to get rid of the EPA. All of those things are things that need to be done away with. So just, saying, oh, well, you can only pick one. No, sorry. But I did at least try to answer the question, right? Next question, are pragmatism and radicalism mutually exclusive? Why or why not? And I think that there's a misconception that radical libertarians cannot be pragmatic. And the difference here is that the way the quote-unquote pragmatist within the Libertarian Party operate is they think that you have to water down the message of liberty in order to be pragmatic, whereas the radicals within the party will say, no, this is the ultimate goal. We're driving across the country. We want to get to Los Angeles. And sure, we're going to have to stop somewhere between New Hampshire and L.A., but the radical is going to keep telling you the end goal. Now, yeah, we're probably going to stop in, New Jersey, Philadelphia, somewhere around there. We're not going to say, yep, we're driving to Philly. The radical looks at the end game, but accepts steps towards that. Yep, let's get rid of the income tax. All right, cut it 2%. All right, good step. Let's get rid of it. There are more questions. They will be answered next Wednesday. This has been Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.